Peace and love. This is Brother Faheem, and you are now tuned in to the League of Logic podcast. You know the vibes. Peace, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of League of Logic, and I'm your gracious host, Brother Faheem. Hey man, life is always moving at a fast pace, and I'm always just trying to use my magnetic to win the race. So much stuff going on. This is another episode, second episode actually, of the Literary Files. And today we are going to be engaging in a conversation about a hot topic. I mean, it's like sweltering right now in the mainstream. And I thought it would be great to discuss because there were so many lessons. There are so many lessons in this great literary work. The topic of discussion that we're going to talk about today, or that I'm going to talk about, is Jada Pinkett Smith and Tupac Amaru Shakur. Now, she just released a book called Worthy, where she goes into her life. It's a memoir, and she deals with a lot of those hot topics. She deals with the slap heard around the world, Will Smith and Chris Rock. She deals with the entanglement, right, between her and August Alsina. But more interestingly, she deals with Tupac, her relationship with Pac, her long documented, long, duly noted relationship with Pac. They were children together, and they were children coming up in an era that was super hard, and their lives were super complex. And so she really delves into that in the book. And I wanted to really kind of bring some clarification on that and bring a little clarity using that as a case study. I want to start out by reading something that she wrote in her book. A note to those who have lost someone special. You'll never get over it. So stop looking for that moment. We just learn to accept and cope with the fact that they are no longer here, and place them upon an altar in our heart and celebrate them there. I thought that was relevant to this conversation because she wrote that speaking about Tupac and her friend girl Maxine, but specifically we're going to use it in relation to Tupac. Now, my show deals with enhancing knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and using critical thought to do so. So, on the critical thought side, whenever we are analyzing something, whenever we are listening, how do we find truth? How do we seek out truth? When we're listening to a person or a thing, we have to remember 5 things, right? When we're investigating to find truth, we have to remember the authority, the currency, the content, the accuracy, and the bias, right? That's to repeat, that's authority, currency, content, accuracy, and bias. Those 3 things, those will help you to understand and interpret things in a healthy manner that are based in objective empirical data and not just emotional subjective feeling. So when you're dealing with authority, who is the author? Who is the expert, right? Do they cite other authors? Have they written books, anything on this field? You understand what I'm saying? Who are we talking about? Who is explaining, or who is the person teaching about the topic of the case study, and what is their level of expertise? Also, the currency, books published, the date, of the publishing, the date in this case, when articles came out, when YouTube clips came out. Do you need to use current and historical information? Either or. Those are those are those are important points as well, right? And how is this information? With currency, you think how current or how contemporary a piece of literature is, or how contemporary a fact is. When was this something? Are there more facts or more details that have come out since that would further explain the phenomena or the case that we're dealing with? Content, is the information relevant to the topic? Is the target audience appropriate? Is it written in an academic or scholarly language? And how valuable is the information to your topic? And with accuracy, can you verify it through sources? Can you recognize the people, right? And is it something that's peer reviewed? That's more or less with paperwork, right? Do you get a variation of perspective? Because see, what you'll learn is whenever it's really solidified and crystallized in the college setting, in the university setting, you have to get multiple sources. You can't just go to Google. You can't just go to, you definitely can't go to Wikipedia because it's not a credible source, because anybody, myself or yourself, can go in there and write something. But they want a multitude of perspective, researched, qualified perspective, right? Because that has a lot to do with accuracy. You know, who's saying this? Who is the peer? And as I'm going to show you some clips, I'm going to show you guys some clips, some sources, some examples of sources, and we'll see all of that. Hopefully, you'll see it. But yeah, so that's kind of what accuracy is. Does it explain the research? Can you verify the accuracy from other sources, right? Uh, and is it peer reviewed? Have other people said yes, who have studied said yes, this is right and exact. And lastly, bias. Is the research sponsored by an organization? Is the author trying to sell or publish a product or service? Or do other authors agree with the author's point of view? Those are things that you want to remember when you are evaluating for sources, right? Authority, currency, content, accuracy, and bias. All of those things, right? So, with that being said, I'm going to share my screen, and I have a few resources that we're going to look at because, we live in a world, man, where people accept unqualified perspectives on everything. And they don't think that they can qualify their own. They don't know to qualify their own. Now, again, I always say this on my show, which is really not a celebrity gossip show. It's not a show that even really concerns itself with celebrities. However, if we can extract a lesson, a symbol of morality, or something that can be learned, that can enhance our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding going forth, and it happens to pertain to a celebrity, then guess what? We'll absolutely use it. We'll absolutely use those celebrities. And let me say this before I go further. If you're listening to me, if you're watching me, like and subscribe to the Lead with Logic channel. I'm also on Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Google Plus. So please like and subscribe at all those places so I can continue bringing y'all this dope and bomb content. Now, so we're gonna look at a few sources, right? We're gonna try to go through. I'm gonna give you guys what people are saying first, and then we're going to uh, go with what the author is saying, which the author in this case will be Jada Pinkett Smith, and we're also going to listen to Tupac as well at the end. But I want to just give you guys what's out there, what people are generally saying. So let me pull this up. I'm gonna share my screen, and hopefully you guys are having a wonderful week. Hopefully the weather's not too bad where you are. So let's share that. All right. And here we go. So this is TK Kirkland. He's a famous comedian. On a Vlad interview, he had said that he had done time with Tupac, Rick James, and he's been celebrity adjacent for the longest. He went on tour with NWA, excuse me, in the 80s. He's also been on tour with Cash Money. He's been on tour with 50 Cent. So he has done very well for himself. However, but comma, that doesn't make him an expert at all things. It just means he's done very well at one thing, which is his career in comedy. But let's listen to what his perspective is on Will and Jada. And this is from a gossip site, but I want you guys to see the perspective. I want you guys to hear what people are making of this, how people are framing what's going on with Will and Tupac. I mean, excuse me, with Jada and Tupac.
TK Kirkland is exposing Jada Pinkett Smith for lying about her relationship with Tupac for attention, and fans are now saying Jada totally exaggerated her friendship with Tupac.
Tupac wouldn't have fucked with her.
Tupac wouldn't have fucked with her. I'm tired of that story.
Jada Pinkett Smith is currently writing a tell-all memoir that will discuss her personal relationships, including her complicated marriage to Will Smith and her friendship with the late great Tupac Shakur. But as you all probably know, Jada has been talking about Tupac for years, so what else needs to be said? And why is Jada so obsessed with still milking Tupac? Well, according to TK Kirkland, Jada is so self-absorbed that she thinks that if Tupac were alive, he would be fixated on her. TK also claimed that Pac never liked Jada like that, and she totally overestimated their relationship. So how did Tupac really feel about Jada? And why does Jada talk about Pac more than she talks about her own husband?
It would have never went down. Oh, Tupac, bitch. I know Tupac. Tupac would have been fucking with you. And I'm just tired of this mindset some women have.
TK Kirkland recently appeared on The Art of Dialogue, and he had some harsh words for Jada Pinkett Smith. TK was
So yeah, I'm gonna fast forward. I just wanted y'all to see that. She, of course, she cut it up and spliced it up, but it was interesting how he said he knew Tupac, and he knew, since he knew Tupac, he knew that Tupac wouldn't fool with Jada, right? So yeah, but that's one source. Now here's what people, whenever I'm online, y'all, and I'm watching something, I always like to see what people are saying. I always read the comments because that gives you a glimpse into people's perspective and people's mentality. You know, there's never anything online that I read, regardless of how quote unquote uh, uh, offensive it may be. If it doesn't affect me in my daily life, you know, my family, my finances, then I'm really not triggered at all. In fact, I'm looking at it laughing because I can see the stage of development that people are in, myself included. But I'm always amazed at people's responses, or I should say people's reaction to things that really they have no vested interest in. But nonetheless, that's TK Kirkland. I like how she split it up because she kind of gets to the crux of what my argument is, or at least how to rise above that. Now, I'm going to take you to what some of the people had to say online. This was a Twitter post that somebody wrote.
Attention business owners. If
We're
you're
gonna mute that right on out. We're gonna mute it right on out. But yeah, this was somebody wrote this and posted it up, right? And I'm gonna put the volume on so you guys can hear. Kind of get a read along, not a sing along, but a read along. Here we go.
and punish him for not being Pac. One fan said Jada never filled the hole Tupac left, so she tried to fill it with a family and failed. Then an affair failed and hurt a lot of people. Incomplete people are the most toxic humans, especially if they're selfish like Jada. And another fan wrote, nah, cause Jada dead ass obsessed with Tupac and he's been gone for 20 years. Tupac didn't even like her like that, and she's out here talking about him like her goddamn husband don't exist. Also, isn't it kind of disrespectful?
So you saw what the people said, and we're gonna get into it. This is all relevant, right? This is all relevant to the conversation. Jada never filled the hole Tupac left, so she tried to fill it with a family and failed. Then an affair failed and hurt a lot of people. Incomplete people are the most toxic humans, especially if they're selfish like Jada. That's what Barry and Toast said, right? Just two internet personalities. And then we have the sister who was in defense, Bora J. Cussy. Nah, because Jada dead ass obsessed with Pac. And he's been gone 20 years. Tupac didn't even like her like that. And she's out here talking about him like her goddamn husband. Don't exist. These, like BTS said, love yourself. So that was one perspective. We heard some celebrity perspectives, right? In TK Kirkland. We hear whoever the sister is, who is, that's her site. We hear her as well. Now let's listen to another podcaster. That would be Joe Budden. He has a podcast, Joe Budden TV. I'm not a super big fan, but the brother is doing amazing. He has a platform. He's utilizing his platform for what he sees fit. Hey, more power to him. I don't subscribe to that, but somebody does. But nonetheless, I think he has an interesting take. They have an interesting take. Melissa Ford is a part of his podcasting crew over there too. So you'll see that as well. But yeah, so here is their perspective on Will and Jada. I'm sorry, I keep saying Will and Jada. Tupac and Jada.
Jada Pinkett. Jada Pinkett. Yes, we are back. We're going to deliver the take, even though we might get smacked. Jada Pinkett released a video of
Will Smith, they said, released this heartfelt message and clip. And she came right back after and released her and Pac.
Dancing like Toe Jam and Earl.
dancing to Parents Just Don't Understand by Will Smith.
See,
5 days before his birthday.
See, I wouldn't feel bad about that as Will Smith.
Why?
Why?
He's a little fan.
he's a what?
He's a fan.
He's an air conditioner. He's not a fan. What are you talking about, nigga?
Who's a fan?
Central.
Pac.
That's how you read this?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's saying that's how Will should read this.
Yeah.
Well, from that angle, you shouldn't be mad because Pac's dead.
That too.
Not he's a fan. He's unalive. What are you talking about?
Keep going. He might be the love, ain't?
She's the fan.
She's the fan. I want to be.
And I'm not mad at you being a fan. We're all a fan of Pac, but how many years do you get to be a fan of this dude?
No. How do you not acknowledge your dude after he releases this heartfelt shit? You come back with that.
You don't release me being the background music for you and your lifelong crush to dance to.
The irony.
And I already sat at your red table when your show was going and told you how I feel about some of this stuff and how I feel insecure and emasculated. That happened. I saw that episode.
He said it on Breakfast Club.
So why does she get to continue to do stuff like this? I'm glad they tear her up in the comments every time it happens now. But Virgos don't be having a heart sometimes, yo.
You don't say.
Oh shit.
She's a Virgo?
Yeah.
So that's that's the bad version of Virgo.
The unevolved Virgo.
The unevolved Virgo, that's her.
The unevolved Virgo sometimes might not care about your feelings. Actually, we might fucking stomp in the wound like Kirk Franklin.
So there we see there was a lot going on right there, right? You hear Joe Budden and his perspective and how he interprets it. That was interesting. He said that Will said that he felt emasculated on the Breakfast Club. We're gonna watch the Breakfast Club so that we can see is that exactly what he said. But he said, how it made me feel. A lot of times, brothers and sisters, how people don't make you feel any kind of way. You make yourself feel a certain kind of way, right? It's important that you identify within yourself those triggers emotionally and mentally that would cause you to have discomfort in your mind. Because a lot of times what people do, because we don't really like holding ourselves accountable or analyzing ourselves. So then we project things on the other people. We project occurrences on the other people and how they make us feel. But in actuality, you're not reacting to the other person. You've been triggered. You're reacting to an emotion that's revving up or coming up within you. And you should ask yourself, why is that emotion rising up? What is it in me that would react to this? Because you can't control people. You can only control self, right? So that's interesting. But nonetheless, for the sake of this build that I'm having, I thought that was super interesting. And I thought that, them interpreting, saying that he would play, that she would play Tupac. What he was referring to was when Tupac and Jada were at an amusement park when they were kids. She talked about that in the book. That's when they made the video, right? But that's special to her, right? Because Pac is her brother. And he said, how long do you get to be a fan? Well, how long would it, if you had somebody who you loved, would you, just because society, or just because you were even married? I mean, that was a brotherly, sisterly type of love. It wasn't a erotic. It was a philiac type love. You have three types of love: agape, which is unconditional. You have eros, which is erotic, and then you have philic, i.e., the etymology behind that is philic, like Philadelphia. You have that brotherly love where there's no erotic, there's no romantical type of energy there. There's just a bond there that's deep, a bond that's aligned in a way that you love each other without the sexual tension, right? So when you have that type of bond in your life, of course you don't want to let it go. But nonetheless, we'll go for it. I'm getting ahead of myself. But that's another source, right? These are people's perspectives on this instance that we are seeing, right? That's Joe Budden and the crew. So I'm gonna show one more. Now this one was kind of interesting to me. This next clip was interesting only because of who made it. But then when I look at how this brother speaks at times, sometimes he can emotionally become unhinged, it appears. And so it's not a knock because I think what brother's trying to do with his school is absolutely necessary and it's an amazing feat if he can pull it off. But I still question sometimes the fortitude or how strong he is emotionally and psychologically, just because it would appear that smaller things get him unhinged, like severely unhinged. So let's check out our main man, Dr. Umar. Like I said, I got respect for Dr. Umar.
If Tupac Shakur proposed to you in prison, Jada, he might have. I don't believe it's impossible that he could have proposed to you. But what I do find impossible is you waiting 25 years to tell the world that Tupac proposed to you. Are you trying to get Will Smith to divorce you so you can take half of his fortune and just separate from Will and do your own thing? I'm kind of getting the feeling, Sister Jada. I'm kind of getting the feeling, Sister Jada. I'm kind of getting the feeling, Sister Jada, that you want Will to divorce you, but you don't want to ask for the divorce. You need it to be initiated by Will because you know how much people would have a problem with you running off with half of that black man's fortune that you did not help build.
So I thought that was super interesting. His bill specifically, number one, because as a doctor, I would expect him to be a little bit more informed than that. I get it. The internet is not reality, and people have their person and then they have their persona, right? And a lot of times I think we are triggered and we respond or react rather to people online, to their online persona. As a doctor, I would expect you to be a little bit more, at least more versed in common sense. Because Jada Pinkett Smith is not really a slouch. She did well for herself. I heard a lot of people talk about her, and I heard some comments where people were saying, well, you know, Will was the reason why she succeeded. Will was the reason for her success. Was he really though? Was he the reason for her success? Now, if people are saying she wasn't an A-lister, that makes sense. But then how many female black leads are there? You know what I'm saying? Like just playing devil's advocate, or just not even playing devil's advocate, just thinking logically, right? Like the only it girl in Hollywood that I can remember being black was Holly Berry, right? That's it. Everybody else is on the same level. Nia Long, everybody's kind of on the same level. My internet, but Nia Long, Vivica Fox, Jada Pinkett Smith, Gabrielle Union, Regina Hall, Regina King. Hell, Regina King been doing it since 227, and she still wasn't really getting her clout. So, it seems to be Hollywood for black leading ladies, for female leads that are Afro American, black, melanated. there seems not to be a whole lot of space for leading A-listing ladies. But now Jada had her own filmography before Will. Remember, she had Jason's Lyric. She had Minister Society. She was in a different world. She had the Ink Well. She had Low Down Dirty Shame. Now, these weren't huge films in mainstream, but these were cult classics. You can go to anybody's house and you're going to see at least one, if not two of those movies, sometimes all of them. You know what I mean? But you'll at least see one. You'll at least see Minister Society, right? But my point is, she had, when you look up and do the knowledge, she had a very lengthy career, and it was successful before Will. But the other thing that I wanted to address is he said, or that was interesting, is how she was gonna leave. She was gonna leave Will, and that she didn't help him build up his empire. You know, I'm a military veteran, and when you go to retirements, anybody who's been to a retirement, they honor two people, right? If you're married, they honor the retiree, the person that's getting ready to retire, and they also honor the person who stood by the person, right? Because they understand that it takes a village and it takes a family to keep one person, to send one person downrange or out into a foreign world and have them work successfully and efficiently. You have to be solid and sound and very confident in what's going on at home, because just like man doesn't live on bread alone, man needs his family life in order to be whole and strong. And I'm saying that to say that brother's a doctor and he should understand that Will Smith hadn't done any of that alone. He didn't. He had a family, whether it was his first wife, whether it was his parents, his siblings, his children, or his wife, his current wife now, who is Jada Pinkett Smith. So, that was, quite, alarming for him to say that. But then again, I like some pretty controversial figures online, right? Anton Daniels, I love that brother. Who else? Sister Angela Staten King. I don't want to say her name wrong. She says things that are controversial, shakes up. These are all people y'all should look up. And my favorite of all time, or at least one of my favorite next to next to Kevin Samuels, is Charlie, old Charlie, or the world knows him as Charleston White. Now, again, I don't agree with everything that any of these people say, but I don't agree with everything anybody says, hardly. But when they're right, they're right. And when they're right, they're on. And when they're not right, hey, I have my critique of them. There's no hostility in my perspective on them. It's just a disconnect there. But here, Dr. Umar, I was surprised that he would say those things. He would use that language and make those statements. That doctor, I guess a guilty pleasure is, I kind of think doctors should be a little bit more elevated, but maybe not. Maybe that's me. So yeah, so we've heard who? TK, Kirkland, right? Joe Budden and Dr. Umar, and also a couple of internet people, right? People with perspectives on them. Those are all sources. Now, what did we say that when we're looking for truth, what do we look at, right? We look at authority, currency, content, accuracy, and bias. So clearly out of those five, we clearly heard a bias, right? Because they seem to be biased against Jada Pinkett, right? Are they an authority figure on them? Some of the facts might have been a little bit skewed, to say the least. But we're going to see here in a minute, right? We're going to get down to what it is, and what the objective facts are. The last person I want you guys to hear, because it's three people really, when you think about this whole thing. It's not just Pac and Jada, it's Will as well. That's maybe the reason why I kept saying Will, because he's just as much a part of this as they are, because they seem to totally emasculate Will when it comes to Tupac. There's this weird dichotomy that exists between Will and Tupac. And I think, again, that's part of Will's struggle. And you'll see in this next clip I'm going to play. But we push up this thug image of Tupac when really Tupac was an intelligent dude. He went to a Baltimore School of the Arts. He wasn't no cat off the streets. 50 talked about that. He talked about Pac and Prodigy. Prodigy was much the same of Mobb Deep. But there's this dichotomy. We celebrate this thug almost like how we celebrate the athlete and the good guy image, the guy who's, doing all the right things, or at least keeping his image clean, trying to stay in line, trying to, do certain things. He gets downplayed. He's a punk. People say stuff like the good guy finishes last. Well, that's a mentality. And people, I don't know if people think of how that mentality or how that psyche affects the quote unquote or said good guy. You understand what I mean? I don't know how that affects it, but I think with Will Smith, I know with Will Smith, because he spoke about it in his book. He talked about the Fresh Prince, which was the nice guy who was never going to not say no to an autograph, who was going to be sometime against his own benefit, super open with his time. And then you have the general. I remember it was the general. The general don't care about none of that. The general needs to get the job done. Boom, he's straightforward. But I think that dichotomy is super duper relevant, and it's something that should be looked into. But nonetheless, I wanted to bring Will to the stand and let you guys hear what Will said. Will is going to be the last witness that I bring to the stand before we get into what actually Jada had to say in Worthy regarding her relationship with Tupac and everything surrounding it. So now on Joe Budden, Will said he felt emasculated. Remember? He said as much on the Breakfast Club, how he felt, emasculated. So let's listen and see what Will actually has to say about that. See how emasculated Will actually felt.
Were you ever jealous of the love Jada had?
Oh, fuck yeah.
I know
oh my God, that dude. Let me, and that was in the early days.
Yeah,
that was in the early days, and it was like, that was a big regret for me too, because I could never open up to interact with Pac, and because we had a little bit of a thing, right? Because they grew up together. And they loved each other, but they never had that. They never had a sexual relationship. But they had come into that age where now that was a possibility. And then Jada was with me, So Pac had a little thing on that, but she just loved him like he was the image of perfection. But she was with the Fresh Prince, So it was like. I never could, like, even we were in a room together a couple times. I couldn't speak to him, and he wasn't going to speak to me if I wasn't going to speak to him.
Really?
But
It's like y'all would have so much in common.
No, that's what Jada would say all the time. She was
Right.
like, "I'm telling you, y'all are so similar. You will love him." And I just never, that was a huge regret of mine. I just didn't. I couldn't handle it. I was the soft rapper from Philly, and he was Pac.
Right.
You
Well,
know
at least
what
he
I
didn't do a
mean?
diss song about you or nothing.
I know,
That would've
right?
been awful.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I was deeply insecure, and just I wasn't man enough to handle that relationship.
So how do you get over it?
So he didn't say he was emasculated. That's something different than saying insecure and not mature enough. That often to be emasculated, man, that's not good at all. That's putting you on the feminine side, right? But I think that was healthy in how he described it. And also, you see, he went into a little bit of what I said about how his image, right, the Fresh Prince, how that image played a factor or played a role in how he felt, because he was the nice guy, good guy, and then Pac was this thug. He's this image, in society and in Jada's eyes. I said this was the last one, but I'm gonna bring up two more witnesses. Spice One, who was a Bay Area legend. For you youngsters who don't know, I need to go check Spice One out. And then Money B, who was a part of Digital Underground. Because again, these are people who were close to Tupac, right? These are people who were right there who were up close and personal and got Tupac's perspective on it. So y'all excuse my slow running. If it's jumping, I see it jumping. I'm sorry about that. But check this out. Let's listen to what Spice One had to say.
Speaking of Will and Jada, man, how do you feel about Jada always bringing up Tupac's name and her relationship with Tupac?
Her and Pac was really close. I don't know if they was having, if they was having a relationship or having relations or something, you know what I'm saying? But they was really close. I know that because he introduced me to Jada one time. And he was like, this is my home girl, she hella cool. And you know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, okay. What's up, Jada? So but I didn't know what was going on between them. It just seemed like they were still friends, that they were friends. He didn't emphasize to me nothing about him and her being, him fucking her or some shit like that. And that was my nigga, you know what I'm saying? So he could have told me anything, and I wouldn't have went told the whole fucking industry or some shit. You know what I'm saying? But I think they were just friends, But I could be wrong. But as far as I know, they was friends.
Speaking of Will, I don't know if you've seen this interview, but he did an interview with Breath Club, and he even told how he was in the same room with Tupac before, and he couldn't bring himself to talk to Tupac because he was so jealous of Tupac's relationship with Jada.
He should have been. He should have been, because they was close as fuck. Even though if they wasn't fucking or not, they were still hella close. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want to be your girl's best friend. You know what I'm saying? You don't want some other nigga to be her best friend and shit. You want to be your girl best friend. Like, that's your friend? Like, come on, man. No, hell no.
So, yeah, you see Spice had a perspective on it where Tupac was telling them, look, it was nothing there. It was really nothing there. They were just close, right? But he also said that Will should have been a little uneasy about their closeness. But it's aching to anybody. Like, you want to be your girl's best friend. You especially, even if whoever the dude is, right? You would feel some type of way if she felt close to him and not close to you. And then on top of that, it's like, hey man, we talking about Tupac Shakur, who was a whole sex symbol back in the day. Women love this dude. So I get it. I understand it. But again, this brothers and sisters, is the last perspective that we're gonna hear, and then I'm gonna get on into it. Money B from Digital Underground.
Was you ever around Tupac when he spoke about Jada, or did he ever bring her around?
He would always speak about Jada. Like, he would always be like,
sorry about
like,
that.
You got to meet. He would always talk about her. Like that's his sister. You got to meet her. You got to meet her. You got to meet her. Wait till you meet Jada. Da-da-da.
Forgive me. We're having technical
Jada, this. He would always talk about her.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this over. Sorry about that. Bear with me, y'all.
Was you ever around Tupac when he spoke about Jada, or did he ever bring her around?
He would always speak about Jada. Like, he would always be like, you got to meet. He would always talk about her. Like that's his sister. You got to meet her. You got to meet her.
I think we're going to stop sharing at this point.
You got to meet her. Wait till you meet Jada. Da-da-da. Jada.
We're going to stop sharing the technical difficulties. But I tell you what, Money B just basically went on to say he didn't think that he said Pac never told him that it was anything sexual, right? It was nothing sexual. It was nothing like that. It was purely platonic. It was a brotherhood and a sisterhood. Just a brotherhood he had with her, and she was his sister. So now we've got all those sources, right? We have people who have no proximity to Tupac with the people who were blog, who's just giving their perspective. We have celebrities who really don't have any type of proximity or closeness other than they're in the same industry. And then we have actually people who knew them, right? People who at least knew Tupac, right? People who knew Tupac and can vouch and can give you a little bit of a deeper insight as to what he said. Now let's listen to Jada Pinkett. Now I listened to this, right? I listened to the Audible that is Worthy, which is her new book. I was just reading about it. They said it flopped. I think it's a beautifully written. I think it's amazingly relevant. And I think that it's explanatory. I think you're going to learn a whole lot of things. And you're going to learn how to do some things. It's not just a book about her memoirs. It's a book about helping yourself and what steps to take to be your best self. So for that reason, I have to give it an A+. So she deals with, I'm going to, paraphrase and go from what I remember. She deals with how she met Pac, going to Baltimore School of the Arts the first day. She's late for orientation and she sees this group of people. And in the smack dab in the middle is this scrawny peanut head dude. That's how she described Pac. And she said, our eyes locked. And then he broke away from the crowd and came over and said, "Hey, hi, my name is Tupac. And what's your name?" He said, "Hi, I'm Jada." Hi, Pac. And, they were inseparable since then. And you've seen it. You guys have seen the interview where she said Pac wasn't necessarily the type of guy she would deal with from his aesthetic or from his looks, but he was super duper magnetic. He had a magnetic that was strong. This is what she said, and I quote, I wrote it down. She said, "Pure unadulterated connection. Pure unadulterated charisma that was out of this world." That was Tupac in the 10th grade when she met him. So he always had that star power. He always had a self-belief, which makes sense because he was reared up to be that way. He was reared up to be relentless in mind and spirit, regardless of the circumstance. She said, she went on to say, "Our immediate connection, I felt, rose beyond the basics. We were kindred spirits in so many ways. Although Pac may have had an attraction to me in the beginning, the more time we spent together, the more we could both see that there was no romantic chemistry between us at all." Yeah, I thought that was cool because, at a point in the book, she said, she was like, "Look, Pac, let's just kiss and see how this works." And she said it was like the most ridiculous thing. It was like two siblings trying to kiss. There was no chemistry there. But it was good that it wasn't, though, right? Because, she talks about the meaning, what that means or what it meant. She went on to say this. This is what he meant to her, or this is what he taught her, their deep soul tie and their deep soul connection. It was possible to really love a guy deeply without it having anything to do with sexual attraction. That's something that in this era where I know Steve Harvey said men and women can't be friends, and then you have to consider you have to consider who the author of that is, right? You have to consider where he's coming from as a wealthy man with resources that may be tempting to those people trying to slide in under the guise of friend, but really looking to be enemy. Then you had Kevin Samuels, and I understand their stages of development. I understand their perspectives. However, it does exist, and it can exist. It can exist. I think that when we look into it deeply, many times it's connected to trauma, which is what it was connected to with Pac and Jada, right? Because they came up, no doubt, in traumatic environments, and their whole childhood, their Bildungsroman, their childhood evolution was steeped in trauma. And so I think I know that was a bonding factor to them, because we bond over trauma. There are people that that you've had traumatic experiences with or identical to theirs, and that makes you all brothers and sisters, right? Pac made up for the lack of male protection and care that I sought in my life. You're gonna find out that Jada's dad, both of her parents were addicts, but her father was, he was out of the photo, as a lot of black men were. He was addicted to drugs, and it took toll on Jada. It made her, it caused her to have to mature prematurely. It caused her to prematurely have to grow up, but it stifled her emotional maturity when it comes to the male relationships and what she saw, right? Plainly put, city girls have daddy issues. A lot of these city girls that we are noticing, the F you pay me, that you can't tell me nothing, that I need a baller, all of that is steeped in issues with daddy a lot of times. Not all the time, but a lot of times it is. So yeah, she said Pac made up for the lack of male protection and care that I saw in my life. And that's huge because a young girl is normally protected by her father. And here it is, she doesn't have that protection. And who steps up? And he has a sister himself, right? Tupac. And another thing, the similarity between them, the trauma that they identify with, brothers and sisters, is both their parents were addicts. Both of their parents were addicts. Their mother, Pac's mother, Afeni, and Jada's mother, Adrian, they were both addicts. The only difference was Afeni was a Panther. So the government, the mainstream of society, had marked them, had ostracized, had banished them to a degree. When they identified and labeled them Shakur, you got Asada Shakur, who's in Cuba right now, Joanne Chesimard. You have Geronimo Jaga, who is Geronimo Pratt, who is Pac's godfather. You have Mutulu Shakur, who just passed recently, who had just got out of jail. These names rung out in the 70s in the revolutionary circles. So if you were affiliated, and then plus Afeni was on trial. She got herself out of jail. That was a famous trial that she was on. So they were well aware of who she was. So then there were no structures, or she didn't enter into any structures that she could provide for herself. That's why financial literacy, that's why our unity is so important, brothers and sisters, because you're going to pay for fighting for your people. You are going to pay. And so you need to build something up. I heard Ruby D, rest her soul. She said, and it was a poem about Tupac that's relevant to what I'm saying. She said, revolutionaries don't get jobs. They get something, disease, after the big gun. No, she said revolutionaries don't get jobs. They compete with rats for cheese after they're shot down when the big gun shoot them and bring them to their knees. She was saying, listen, when you decide to be a revolutionary, understand you are going to be shot down. There's a penalty to pay for that. And Pac's family paid that penalty, and Jada witnessed it all. So I know she looked at Pac like, wow, this guy's really struggling. But back to what she was saying about their romantical, or them having a chemistry that was not eros or erotic. She said, I think God knew that if sexual attraction had been possible between us, we would have left each other in a special kind of, they gifted us with a special kind of friendship. Right? I'm going to read that again because I see where my connection might be acting up. Y'all bear with me. Jada said, I think God knew that if sexual attraction had been possible between us, we would have left each other in a special kind of ruin. Instead, God gifted us with a special kind of friendship. That was beautiful. That was absolutely magnificent and beautiful. And, she goes into a lot of who she was in this book. I think there's this clamor of Hollywood, these lights, that we believe that people come from these two-family homes, or at least in our mind, we want to believe that, right? She was basically her character, Lena James. And she talks about how Lena James was created. But Lena is basically Jada Pinkett. Yeah. That character that was created was based off of Jada Pinkett's life. So but yeah. But she went on to say, and these I wrote this down. These are her words, Jada's words. As Pac and I grew closer, I got a clear picture, and I learned that, like my mother, his mother, Afeni, struggled with addiction. Like mine, his environment was full of instability and chaos. We really bonded as a result of riding the same roller coaster with our moms, and both suffered the pains and disappointments that came with it. That's that bonding that I was talking about. That's why she loves him so much. That's why you see the outpouring of love. I want y'all to always, whenever Jada Pinkett whenever she talks about Tupac, I want you to pay attention to her eyes, and you can see the sadness behind it. Pay attention. I'm gonna show some clips. I'm gonna show her speaking about Tupac, and you watch her eyes. The eyes are the windows of the soul for a reason, because the mouth lies. The mouth is the most disingenuous part of our body, right? But everything else, the eyes are the most honest. So when you look at her eyes and you look at when she talks about Tupac, the reverence she has, there's also a deep sadness there, a sadness that knew what he had to go through. Not only just loved him and hates that he's gone, but could identify with his struggle, right? And so I thought that was beautiful. You know, we all want somebody that we can identify. Hopefully it's your mate, it's your spouse, it's your whoever, it's somebody close to you, because that can be therapeutic. Another thing I wanted to say, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of the red table talk, as I don't think a lot of men were. And Jada Pinkett is a feminist. You know, that's another thing that she talked about her and Pac butted heads because she had a feminist stint to her, which is cool. But with the red table talk, you know, I see Will, this is the way I see it. Will, like many men, suffer in silence. We don't allow our emotions. We are taught that our emotions can never be on display. Michael told Vito Corleone, men and women can be careless. Men can't. Meaning they can get emotional. They can have breakdowns. They can publicly do things that are against their interests. But when a man does that, he hurts himself and unfortunately those people that depend on him. So the way I see it, Will really he hasn't been vocal about a lot in his life until the book that came out, right? But Jada needs that therapy, because what you find out is she's been through a lot, and it's almost like PTSD. You have to handle that trauma. You have to handle that trauma. Otherwise, it will manifest itself in other places, other things. It might not be, always recognizable. And as a celebrity, you can't hide things because you're in a fishbowl, right? But after listening and reading her book, I understand that the red table talk was merely her being therapeutic, her method of receiving therapy and offering women who may have gone through or might be going through the similar experience as her. So hey man, that's what's up. You created something, Jada, that I think is dope. Like I said, Pac really struggled. He really struggled, and she watched him struggle, right? This is all what she's talking about. She talked about her and drugs and how she was a drug dealer and, different things of that sort. But she talked about Pac struggling. She said, these are her words again, Pac never said so, but I could tell that getting to eat 3 meals a day for him was not a given. It was not a given for him. Nor were shoes that fit or getting a good night's sleep. Yeah, she said Pac had it a little bit rough. She also, at one point, she talked about when she met Afeni, she went there and, she, being in the hood in Baltimore, she had seen projects, she had seen, impoverished communities, and it was all a sight. She said, but when I saw how Pac was living, she said he lived on a thin mat. His bed was a thin mat and a thin sheet, and that was it. She said, oh my God. She said it made all the projects I had been to look like the Four Seasons. So she, she was really, you could tell in retrospect, she admired Pac's internal fortitude to be in that environment and not be of that, to be in it, but not of it, if that makes sense. He didn't allow that to consume him. But no, she was selling drugs and she had a little bit of excess cash. She said, to help Pac, I made it my business to ensure that he was straight, but not on some charity shit. Pac was prideful. He had standards about what it meant to be a man and stood his ground on that in spite on how he may have been suffering. If he was made to feel like I thought he needed assistance, he would refuse support from me. And then she went on, I didn't write it, but I remember her saying, and in those moments, my heart withered watching him struggle through that. Pac has standards. I like that. That was something that touched me, honestly, because she said he had standards even as a young boy. He had standards of what it meant to be a man, as we should all have standards. And we should work to uphold those standards. We fall short, but we should never, ever be without. It should never be a time we're not working to work that power to refine it. That power refinement should always be engaged. We should always be looking to refine that. Something that I put an asterisk by that I thought was super duper ironic, right? She said, I didn't bring Pac around often because I didn't want to pull him into the dangers of the Baltimore dope scene. That's ironic because later she talks about how when Pac became a rapper, he didn't pull her into the rap scene because it was dangerous. Another thing she said, Pac was, in many ways, he was a neighborhood pariah because, he wasn't in the drug selling. He was just trying to hone his skills as an MC. He was really focused in on elevating himself through the arts. And people didn't really appreciate that. They didn't think he was good looking. They didn't think he was cool. He wasn't this mega star that he became. And I think that's a big, big, big lesson to all the brothers and sisters, the children out there who are trying to do something with themselves. Understand it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish at. Pac understood early, Jada understood early that, you have to fast steadfast to your dreams and your goals. And so Pac was just that. He was just that. So Pac, if you've seen the movie, there go the Wi-Fi. Yeah, man. When you live in a rural community, brothers and sisters, sometimes Wi-Fi can be a challenge. But if you've seen the Tupac movie, All Eyes on Me, you see how he left abruptly. Now, in that movie, it was an inaccurate depiction, as many films are. It showed where he told Jada he was leaving. In actuality, Jada, the way she described it is he left her a letter and he was gone. And he left her a number that she could call him at. And she called him. And that's how they handled it. And they talked right like that. And he always gave her numbers where he was. And, he wanted her to always be able to get a hold of him when she needed to. And so she talked about this. She wrote this of when he left. He did his best to ease my hurt feelings about his sudden departure and my desire to make shit right for him. I hated the fact that I was absolutely powerless to make his life easier. See, there you go. She looked at Pac. She looked at her life and she looked at Pac's life, and they both had it hard, but his was just a little bit harder, right? And this is the era, this is the period Pac left Baltimore and went to Marin City, which is Northern California, close to Oakland. His father, Matulu, was actually from Baltimore, and I hadn't done any official research, but I'm pretty sure that's probably why Feeney and them took that sojourn down from New York to Baltimore. It's probably to be close to Matulu's people. But yeah. And at the end of, let me say this, at the end of every chapter, y'all, she gives insight and she also challenges the reader and the listener to do something. Like, in this one, she read a quote, "Find your tribe, love them hard." And what her challenge was, she challenged the reader to, hey, cherish these bonds that you get that they might be unexpected from people that you may never expect, that just want to make your life easier. They just want to see peace in your life, right? And that's a huge reflection of who Tupac was. Now, that all that is relevant to the perspective that's out there. All that's relevant to the chatter. And again, it's not necessarily about Pac and Jada. It's about deciphering through circumstances that you guys will encounter, like Pac and Jada. How do you get a clear understanding, right? How do you see things for what they are and not for what they appear to be, right? This is the manner in which you do that. So in the other is, she speaks about Pac in different chapters, in various chapters, but one of the chapters is living the dream. Now, at this point, Jada's, if y'all don't know, just fast forward. So Jada's selling dope. She almost I ain't gonna tell you, some dangerous things happen to her. Her mother sends her down to North Carolina to the school down there, and she starts honing her craft and becoming an actor. She's already a gifted kid, right? She can already act. She already got accepted to Baltimore School of Arts, and now she goes down to a college where they're going to hone. They're going to take it a step higher. They're going to build on to what she has. So she says this. At this point, simultaneously, Tupac is starting to rise in the hip hop world because he's now with Digital Underground. So he's touring, so he's got a little money, right? And he's got a little acclaim, a little fame. She said, she had talked to him on the phone, right? When she went to North Carolina. And he said, I'm proud of you. Stay focused on school. If you need something, you let me know. Don't get stupid down there. I'll send you a little something whenever you need it. It never failed. After every conversation we had, I would end up getting some cash in the mail from him. How the tables had turned. I was like, wow. As a man, as a person who has been on the receiving end of charity, and you feel powerless to not be able to return that good deed, man, that's one of the best feelings in life. It's probably about better than sex. Some of y'all will be like, I don't know what you're talking about, brother. But no, man, just to be able to be in a position to help those who have helped you, man, that's like, it's rejuvenating for your soul. It really is. It's really rejuvenative. And so I would suggest you try it. You might not always be able to help the person who helps you, but help somebody. Help the person. When you see yourself in the person that needs help, see the person that helped you in yourself, if that makes sense. You'll look at a situation and you'll see, oh, wow, that was me in the situation, and this was such and such. So the best way to help or to repay such and such is to help the person that's in my situation now. So that's what she was saying. She was in college, she was struggling. Pac had some bread, and he would send it to her. And he was merely repaying her for what she did. Now, a lot of people are finding out that, if you knew back then, Pac got Jada Pinkett the Minister Society role. And what I found out was when Pac was put off, or he stopped, he ceased to be a contributor in the movie or one of the parts. Jada wanted to take flight too. She wanted to lead too, which is to be expected. That's her brother. And so Pac was like, no, you cannot. You can't do that. You have to stay on this because this is good for your career. It's good for your career. So I'm going to pause for the calls real quick and tell anybody, if you guys are listening, if you're watching, thank you, thank you, thank you. What I want y'all to do is like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to the Lead with Logic podcast and channel on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Instagram, Google Plus. And I'm also, if you tap on my YouTube page, it'll take you to my store where you can get some of these nice handy dandy sweatshirt. It's getting ready to get cold. Grab you one, go out and support the movement, support logic, support intelligence and utilizing intelligence to enhance your life. So I just wanted to say that before we moved on. Now I digress. So yeah, he got her that part. He got her that role, and she wanted to bail because of what was going on with him and the Hughes brothers. And he was like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You got to stay on. And that's a brother too. When you love people, sometimes it might be something that appears to be against you or that may not benefit you anymore. But if it benefits your brother or your sister, then you got to support them, and you have to placate that they do what's in their best interest. That's what I do for my people. Hey, I want you to be your best self regardless. And so let's work at that. Let's work on that. Let's go in that route. And that's what Pac was for. So she said this. She said he loved being by my side at premieres and such. Not because he needed more of a spotlight for himself, but because he got a kick out of seeing me shine. He would often tell me, I'm so proud of you. And I always knew you would do you. I always knew you would do it. You always been a star. Just don't let your head get too big, Square. But because he got a kick out of seeing me shine, how many of you all want to see your people shine? You don't need the wayfair. You don't need the grandiose. You don't need the attention. You don't need none of that. The only thing you need is to see your loved ones shine. Anybody feel like that? I do. Yeah, because it's a reminder. When other people shine, I have the ability to shine. Nothing's new under the sun. That's what people say, but do they really believe it? If they believed it, then they would support more for people. They would root for more people to win because they would attach the other person winning to them being able to win. And that would give them that drive. Right? So I thought that was, again, these are the reasons, brothers and sisters, why we see the strong response and emotional attachment that Jada Pinkett Smith has to Mr. Tupac Amaru Shakur, right? This stuff ain't to be taken lightly. I would only hope that those of you listening and watching have someone in your life like this. Yeah. So this is what he said. He said, "You looked out for me when you didn't have to. I'm always going to love you for that with all my heart, always." So that just showed you that Pac was really grateful. He was grateful. It's a guy, Jada mentions him. Jada was actually he was a white cat. Jada had a crush on the white cat, right? Which was cool. Back in high school, his name was John Cole. And John Cole, I looked him up. Everybody talks about the letter where Pac, he read the letter. His character read the letter. The cat read the Jada, you are my heart in human form, a friend I can never replace. People talk about that, but if you look up, he wrote a letter to John Cole, which was a white cat he ended up staying with, which was Jada's boyfriend. You know, he said the same language. I hear the same language. He was very grateful. He said, you helped me when you didn't have to. So that shows that Pac really understood. People didn't know him anything, and he was grateful for everything. I was like, whew, to be such a young boy and understand that, right? That's huge. That is huge. And you can find, if you type in Tupac's friend John Cole in the Google search, and I'm sure the letter will pop up. I can't remember how I found it, but yeah. So Pac was super duper grateful for what he had, the people who supported him on the way to where he was going. But this is this is how she defined Pac, right? And at the end of this, she said, "He was a constant in my life. Whenever I called, he was coming no matter what." How many of you have somebody like that? A constant that regardless of what's going on, they're willing to drop it to come help you. And if you did have it, or you do have it, how would you manifest it? Would you be excited about it? Would you continually bring it up? Or would you hide it off from the world? And could you blame a person for responding in the opposite polarity that you chose, knowing the love that you have for that person? What are you saying, Faheem? I'm saying we can't. Okay, the Wi-Fi is acting up. The Wi-Fi is acting up, but it'll come back. It'll come back. Black seed, keep on growing. We can't really control how people mourn. We can't control how people celebrate life. And we can't control how people honor and cherish loved ones that may not be here, right? Or that are here that offer us something like what Pac offered Jada and Jada offered Pac, right? That constant that will come whenever you need them. Now, the last, before I give you guys my takeaways and let y'all hear, firsthand through Jada and Pac how they feel about each other. It was a chapter called Lost Unmourned, and she's dealing with how Pac died, because they weren't in contact. And she went into how their relationship was tumultuous, but it was always constant. Like she said, they knew that they could count on each other. And that we have those relationships. We might not see eye to eye. We might at the core have different paradigms and perspectives just because of our journeys in life have taken us down different paths. but we understand and we know that person loves me, and if I need them, they'll be there. Well, she talks about feeling guilty because she wasn't there when he passed, but she said something, because she said, of course, how he died and everything, where she was on the Woo set, the movie Woo with Tommy Davidson, and she asked Afeni. She said Afeni thought he was going to live, and I kind of remember that back in those days, how there was an air. Pac had been shot before, so he's kind of like a cat with 9 lives, right? He can survive this. He survived it before. So that was the common theme in the air. That was the sentiment that was buzzing around. Oh man, Pac got shot 5 times. He gonna be good. He can survive this. So when he died, it was huge. But of course, Jada didn't go to the hospital. She didn't go to Las Vegas where he was. But she said that of this. I'm glad I never made it to Vegas, though. I'm glad my last memory of Tupac is not an image of him in a coma. I'm glad I didn't have to share a space with Suge as Pac was dying. I thought that was huge because I don't really do funerals because of that reason. Because I don't want my last memory of you, of my loved one, of whoever, to be you laying in a box. I remember when Michael Jackson died, Joe Jackson, I wanted to know what his family thought, right? How did they feel? What were they going through? I wanted to witness it as best I could. And I kept going back to one figure. And I always tell people, he is my favorite Jackson. Joe Jackson is by far my favorite Jackson. He catches a lot of flack for being a black father, but he was just arrogant enough. He was just cocky enough to deal with the naysayers and the leeches and the onlookers who really hated his family for the only reason is because they were black and successful. But he did a TV One interview, and the interviewer said, if you had been in Michael's life, would this have happened? He said, no. He said, I had told some people that if I didn't get to Michael, he was in trouble. And that's exactly what had happened. He said, he said, I didn't want to go up there and see him laying in a casket like that. He said, I wanted to remember him live and dancing on stage. And I thought to myself, wow, that's the truth, man. When you love people, you don't want to remember them at their lowest. You want to remember them at their highest. You want to remember them doing what they love to do. You want to remember them thriving, because that's how you cherish and honor them. That's in your memories museum, like Kanye said. That's in your memories museum, and you own that. You're in control of that. So I thought it was dope that, and the other side of that is you can comfortably and peaceful-mindedly, if that's a term, with a peaceful mind, let me say that, let me clean that up. With a peaceful mind, you can rest well because you understood that you did the best that you can do for that person. That's the other side of it. And Jada understood that Pac knew that she loved him. But yeah. Wait out this Wi-Fi. A couple of things that I took away. It was just a few things. First and foremost, give people their flowers while they yet live. Jada Pinkett had no earthly idea that after being separated from Tupac for a year, he would only pass, and she would never get a chance to tell him how much she loved him. She would never get a chance to tell him how much she cared about him. And she would never get a chance to tell him what he meant to her life. Right? But she's telling him now. Right? And that's therapeutic for her. That's what I think we're seeing. That's what I know we're seeing. Right? And she's not a perfect person. None of us are. She has issues and problems. And she's also a celebrity and a businesswoman. For people who don't understand, like a lot of people are saying she's talking too much. Well, She's not talking any more than the Kardashians when they open up their living room and say, "Come on in." She's not talking any more than Real Housewives of Atlanta or Potomac or wherever when they let you come in and get into their business, right? She's not talking any more than Real Basketball Wives or Real World, MTV, or any of Survivor or any of these different television shows that have been constructed in this new technical era where people want to hone in and investigate your deepest, most vulnerable, darkest human moments. And she has a purpose. At least she's getting paid for it. You got to be able to monetize everything about your existence and not sell your soul, right? Now, some of y'all gonna say, "Oh, yep, she's selling her soul." I don't think she is. In fact, I know she's not. I know she's not. But yeah, give people their flowers while they yet live, because you don't know if they're gonna see another day or if you're gonna see another day. Next, deep love between men and women can exist without the burden of romance. That is something that is a topic that is worth looking into, because there can exist. Pac and Jada are the perfect example that there can exist these relationships between men and women. They absolutely can exist. And they do. But I'm saying they can exist in a way that it's on a grand scale and it's open and people aren't ashamed of it. We just have to build. Now I'm gonna leave you guys. With Will and Jada. I mean, Tupac. Damn, I keep saying Will. Tupac and Jada. I want you to hear what they had to say about one another and how they loved each other. I think they're the primary sources, right? And so we will, since Tupac is no longer with us in the physical, we will allow Mr. Shakur to go first. And then the rest of it will be Miss Pinkett Smith. Man, I appreciate y'all. All right, let's see. And y'all probably heard this. You know, this is just for all the naysayers. You know, TK said Tupac wouldn't fuck with her. Dr. Umar. It was Dr. Umar. People, the people say, you know, Joe Budden said she been riding Tupac. She been a fan for all that time. You know, just a whole bunch of rhetoric, right? Well, let's hear what Mr. Pac had to say. Let's hear what Mr. Shakur had to say.
Jada, yeah. Jada's my heart. You know what I mean? She would be my friend for my whole life. Well, maybe I'll be down to scoop you up later in life. You ain't all shriveled up. We'll be all together. Be like Ozzie Davis and Ruby D.
But you know, you always got a place in my heart.
She can have my one heart, my liver, my lungs, my kidneys, my blood, marrow, all of that.
Go ahead, Pac. Go ahead, Pac. Now that's what Mr. Shakur had to say. Now let's listen to what Jada says about her brother, who has been long departed. It's been, it's going on, 30 years? Something like that. It's getting close to 30 years. Let's see. Like and subscribe. And y'all check my store out. Got nice merch on there.
A lot of people, you know, talk about my relationship with Pac and trying to figure that out, you know, and that was a huge loss in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
because he was one of those people that I expected to be here. And my upset is more anger. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel that he left me. And I know that's not true. And it's a very selfish way to think about it, but I really did believe that he was going to be here for the long run.
That's one of the clips. That's one of them. I'm going to give y'all a couple of them to chew on. This one's a little bit, it's a couple minutes, about 5 minutes. This is Jada on Howard Stern talking about Pac.
When your mom picks you up, gets you out of Baltimore, sends you to School of Arts.
Yeah.
You meet Tupac Shakur.
No, I met Tupac at Baltimore School for the Arts. We went to high school together.
And
Yes.
you were very close with Tupac Shakur.
Yes.
And Tupac Shakur wasn't the gangster that we all think he was, right? I remember his mother was a Black Panther.
Yes.
And he had a lot of Black Panthers, sort of raised by the Black Panthers and all that. But
He was a revolutionary without a revolution, if that makes any kind of sense. So then that kind of energy just transferred to a whole nother thing.
And don't you believe at that time he was in love with you because he would write poetry about you?
You know, I think it's so funny because now being older, I have more of an understanding of what that was between us because, you know, when you have two young people who have very strong feelings, but there's no physical chemistry between us at all.
You were not
And it wasn't
attracted to
even
him.
just for me.
Right.
You know, it was him too. I mean, you know, there was a time when I was like, just kiss me. Let's just see how this goes. And when I tell you it had to be the most disgusting kiss for us both.
Why? Explain that to me. Because it was so platonic, the relationship?
I think, you know, the only way I can put it is just the higher power just did not want that because I feel as though if Pac and I had any kind of sexual chemistry, we might have killed each other because we were both so passionate and, you know, we love deeply. I mean, it was hard enough just with us being friends. We had a very volatile relationship.
Did you recognize him as a great talent at that point?
I did.
What was it? His poetry?
It was his poetry. It was his personality. I had never in my life met a person
with
like
that kind of
Pac.
charisma.
He had so much charisma, and he didn't have. He was poor. I mean, Pac was poor. When I met Pac, he owned 2 pairs of pants and 2 sweaters, and that's it.
Were you shocked when he achieved the degree of fame that he did?
Absolutely not.
Really?
I
Because
knew
come
that
on.
was going to happen.
I mean, for both of you to become famous out of this shitty neighborhood in Baltimore
Yeah.
is almost impossible.
It is. It's crazy. And he used to tell me all the time, he was like, Jada, you're a superstar. He's like, you're a superstar.
He
And
didn't say it
I
about
didn't-
himself.
He didn't say it about himself. No, he didn't. But he used to say it about me. And and he went to LA he went to Oakland. He went up north and things started jumping off for him. And it really happened for us both at the same time.
But then as you go off to LA and pursue a career and he goes off doing his thing, you guys are not friends. He went to jail.
He went to jail.
And you've said when he went to jail for the first time, he called you after that and that he changed. Jail changed him.
Well, it wasn't. There was a lot of things that transpired once he went to jail. It was really once he came out
Right.
that he changed quite a bit, which
You mean
is
his fame
understandably.
changed him or just coming out of jail?
No, jail. Jail was a very difficult experience for him,
Right.
and of course we were on 2 sides of the spectrum, and Pac and I have always had very intense conversations. arguments. And, you know, if we disagree with each other, we disagree hardcore. And we had a very hardcore disagreement. And
What
it
was the
just,
disagreement? What was the thing that broke you guys up in terms of a friendship?
I just wasn't in agreement with the direction that he was taking. And I just told him that, you know, it was a destructive direction. You know?
A scary
A
direction.
very scary direction. And he felt as though, you know, I had changed. I got Hollywood. You know.
Right.
You had
And
gone soft.
I've gone soft.
Right.
Right. And I understood all that, you know, and looking back now, I totally understand where Pac was, because at that particular point in time, that mentality was part of his survival for that moment. And it was actually a mentality he started to come out of before he was murdered.
Right. And so you hadn't spoken to him for a couple of years. And the point I'm getting at is that when he was murdered, you probably felt a lot of guilt that you hadn't been in touch. Yes. Or were you guilt free because you said to yourself, well, listen, I couldn't go in that direction. I didn't want to be friends with someone who was getting so hardcore angry.
You know, I don't think I was guilty as much as I felt just sadness, you know, for not having, you know, just the opportunity to tell him that I loved him. But I know he knew that, you know, because it wasn't the first time that we had had a bad argument and had stopped speaking and all of that. I mean, that was kind of a constant in our relationship. So I didn't really look at it as, you know, a reason to feel guilty, but it definitely taught me a lesson, which is life is too short. Do not let disagreements stand in between you and people that you love and care about.
I can tell you're really emotional about him. I mean, you're crying.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of him, you have tears in your eyes.
You know, I love him.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrible ending.
It was really tragic. But you know what? He left a very strong and powerful mark. I mean, people are still, you know, inspired by him.
Yeah.
So he did his work.
Absolutely, he did his work. Absolutely. Yeah, so it's just one more. One more. And we're going to get on up out of here. One more clip, but I dig the fact that she, you know, you saw that emotion. You saw her eyes told the story. Yeah. Her eyes told a story. This is the last one I'm going to show about Mr. Tupac, Jada and Pac. This is very good, though.
It was completely unconditional and formless, you know, and trying to like identify it as something. We just loved each other. And whatever it was in that moment, whatever it needs to be, whether it was mother, sister, you know, teacher, whatever, you know what I mean? That's what I mean when you have to love somebody in freedom. You can't be like, oh, we're just this thing, you know, because then it's this narrow. Love's not narrow. I was very lucky to have a relationship like that at a very young age that kind of helped form my concept of what love could be like with the masculine without the romance. The first time we met each other was at school. I was living a very different life then than I'm living now, that's for sure. I was a roughneck, you know. The lifestyle that I was a part of at that time wasn't really who I was. He was always that voice in my head. It was just like, he would tell me all the time, he's like, you're a ghetto superstar. Having a man who I really felt like loved me without the sex part of it. We just, for some reason, we just didn't have it. We needed to be something different for each other. We just didn't have the sparks. It's crazy. You think me and Pac would have crazy sparks, but we didn't. We didn't have anything. Nothing. He really showed me what that feeling was like to be loved by a man. Even to this day, I can still feel him. You know, he's with me. So I've been blessed. Blessed.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's here. It's here. It's
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. True green. But no. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to speak on Pac and Jada just because so many people are taking shots at Jada Pinkett Smith. They are taking shots at Mr. Willard Smith. And I think they are inaccurately and incorrectly making assumptions about Pac and Jada's relationship then and definitely to what it would be today. But my point, or what I wanted to get out there to you, brothers and sisters, is let's base our perspectives and our opinions in our lives on something other than just hype, something other than just emotion, and something other than just feeling. Now, I understand some people will choose to ignore logic. Some people will choose to ignore objective and empirical fact. And that's at the stage of development that they're in. And we have to accept that. But for those who are trying to rise above emotion into the thinking of God, for those who are trying to use the mathematics and the lessons and the wisdom to be God, for those of you who are trying to deal in equality, the way I'm laying it out is the way you should do it, right? That's exactly the way you should do it. So, again, I appreciate y'all coming. Like and subscribe to Lead with Logic. I can't say that enough here on YouTube. Share this video. Comment up under. Leave some comments. I'll get back to you. Whatever you think, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. I appreciate it all. Like I say, like and subscribe. Check my store out. Get some gear. I'll get it to you. Support the movement. And as Minister Malcolm says, may we all meet again in the light of understanding. Hey, peace and love, y'all.